Hi, my name is Sheila Francois, and what you are about to see is a candid conversation with me and Leslie Herod. And in that conversation, we are going to discuss the status of the Black community in Denver, and we are also going to discuss a bill that she, along with her colleagues, have introduced called the Law Enforcement Accountability and Integrity Bill. Hey, my name is Sheila Francois, and I'm here at the Block Distillery with Representative Leslie Herod. And today we are here to discuss what is going on with what is the current state of the Black community. And I also wanted to talk about the current bill that Representative Ms. Herod introduced along with other legislatures last week, I believe, and we'll get into it a little bit more. And the reason why we decided to have this platform is so that way we can get this information out to the community, so that way they can figure out how they can get involved and they can learn about different resources that are available to the African American community in light of what is going on, in light of what has happened in Minnesota, which is where in light of George Floyd's death. So first, I just wanted to give Leslie Herod an opportunity to introduce herself.
Thank you. Well, hello everyone. I am State Representative Leslie Herod. I'm so happy to be here at the Block Distillery. Check it out. I know they opened this week, so come down and celebrate us as we celebrate the passage of Senate Bill 217. And I'm really excited to talk about the bill a little bit because there have been so many people out in the streets, out in front of the Capitol, protesting and speaking about police brutality and Black lives, right? And so in response to that, I have introduced a bill to hold law enforcement accountable. It's called the Law Enforcement Accountability and Integrity Act, and we're getting it through.
Yes.
Just this week, we were able to get it passed through the Senate, and we will hear it in the House shortly.
And just before we get into that, I just first wanted to give you a little bit of background context of how we sort of came about having this meeting. Truth be told is that I graduated from law school in Minnesota, and I actually used to work for the Hennepin County Attorney's Office, the very office that is charging the officers for the death of George Floyd. And for several days, I had been sitting at home watching what was going on. And then I noticed that the size of the protests, they were getting very, very massive. And I started to realize while I was sitting at home, wait a minute, you know what? I can't just sit at home because George Floyd's death was more than just an individual dying. Oftentimes, as an African American, I found that throughout my journey in life is that whenever a Black person does something, it often affects an entire community compared to, just to be frank, a white person, they might represent themselves as an individual. So when he died, a part of me also died as well because I think at this point we're tired of Black people dying. We're tired of excessive police use of force. We're tired of police brutality. We're tired of the injustices that are going on. And I reached out to Rev. Leslie Herod. She was more than willing to speak to me. I've been following her on social media, and I was super excited about this opportunity to interview with her. And so, I did see you out there, right at the beginning stages. We're going on 2 weeks, but just to backtrack when you initially got out there, what is your analysis, your theory on the status of the Black community here, particularly in Denver?
Yeah. Well, so it's really interesting because a lot of folks don't remember kind of the start of the protests right here in Denver. And so on that Thursday, which was the very beginning, at about 4:45, 5:15, I was out on the Capitol steps with peaceful protesters, and someone shot at me. Someone shot into the crowd. There were 7 shots that rang out into the crowd, came from down Broadway and up to the Capitol steps. 1 shot landed into the building, and it was real gunshots. I mean, this is, they were definitely folks who were already trying to instigate violence on the first day in broad daylight on the Capitol steps. So the state troopers actually pulled me to safety, and in that moment, it was, I think, it made the legislators in that building feel like they were more connected to what was actually going on outside, and realize that they weren't safe just because they have a title. They weren't safe just because they were in the Capitol building, but in fact that there was something happening on the ground in Denver that demanded change.
Wow.
And so In that moment, and then with all of the folks who showed up, within hours later, some knew there was a shooting and some people didn't. And thank God, by the way, nobody was hurt. But in that moment, folks realized there's so much anger, so much angst, and Black folks are being reduced to a hashtag and how they died. That's not okay. That's not okay. So in that moment, and within hours, I received calls from my Democratic colleagues in the House saying, what can we do to support you? And I said, I'm sick of protesting, right? I'm sick of protesting without action. We need a bill, we need an accountability bill, and I want your support. And as the protests were raging outside and showing no signs of giving up, which is, thank you for that. My colleague said, we will introduce this bill, we will sign on to it even before it was introduced. We support you, we have your back. And so my message to Denver is thank you. Thank you for showing up, all of Denver. Thank you for showing up and saying that this really matters. Even if I don't know what it's like to be Black. I don't know what it's like to be a Black person pulled over by law enforcement. I do know that what I'm seeing is wrong, and it's time for me to stop being so comfortable and act. So that's how we introduced the bill. And I will tell you that because there has been sustained pressure and attention to this bill over the course of the last few days, we're able to get this thing through. And so, I think with the anger and the frustration and the angst, there has been action, there has been movement, and I'm seeing it across the country, and that's really what matters. But I want to ask you a question.
Absolutely.
So I saw a video of you, and because I'm like on social media like this, right? I'm like looking for people I need to turn in, and law enforcement officers who would be doing bad things, like I've been sitting there right away, and thankfully they've been taken care of. But I saw you pretty frustrated. And, it's interesting because I think some folks even say, oh, angry Black woman, why are you so angry? Talk about like how it feels to be portrayed as angry Black woman, but why were you so, in that moment, expressing so many frustrations? How do you feel?
Right, so it's actually funny, I remember this like yesterday. So last week I did decide to attend my first protest, going back to what I said. I had been watching what was going on, and one day I decided to go out to protest with a friend. And then the mayor actually came out to speak, and there was just a certain phrase that I sort of get triggered to, and that is, I hear you and I see you. And 2 days prior, I was actually on Facebook, and I followed Governor Polis very heavily. And he said, I hear you and I see you. And I started to get very frustrated because I felt like as a governor, he should be out here supporting us, just like how the mayor's out here, just like how we've had white city councilwomen out here, just like how we had the director of DPS out here. How can you, and I thought to myself, how can you hold press conferences with tons of people, but you don't want to come out here and protest with people? How is it that you can continue to address people behind the camera saying, I hear you and see you, but you're not giving us action plans, or you're not letting us know about what is going on in the community? So what exactly happened was the mayor was speaking, and I just wouldn't let him speak because I was very, very frustrated because he said, I hear you, I see you, and we want to continue to hear you and see you, without giving us an action plan. And you brought a good point earlier. Protesters have been showing up, and I must admit, I am truly impressed by the massive amount of people who are showing up, and it's growing each and every day. I attended my second protest this past Saturday, and I started to notice a lot of children. I started to notice families there protesting. So, just going back to what had happened on this day, honestly, I did not let the mayor speak, and it was not anger. I would never want anybody to misinterpret my anger as anger. It actually is truly passion and high energy, because I felt like I am George Floyd. Like, I may not have experienced police brutality in the same context, but I know what it's like to be discriminated against. I know what it's like to feel microaggression. I know what it's like to feel like I am the only person, and hearing him scream, help, help, I can't breathe, mama, mama, hearing that, honestly, just kind of went straight to my heart, and I felt like in that moment, I wanted to say something, and I didn't really know how to go about it. But the host, Quincy, actually called me out from the crowd and said, young lady, come over here, we believe that you should have a platform for your voice. And I told everyone I graduated from law school with the Hennepin County Attorney's, I worked for the Hennepin County Attorney's Office.
Wait, what is Hennepin County?
So Hennepin County Attorney's Office is the prosecutor's office in Minnesota. So I worked directly under Mike Freeman, and it's actually interesting because he was someone who prided himself in doing the right thing.
So these are the prosecutors who didn't take action right away.
These are the prosecutors.
The ones who, I mean, like, listen, if those law enforcement officers were taken in and put behind bars right away, we wouldn't have these protests. But there's so many times when officers just don't even, there's no action taken, or they're put right back on the streets, like in the same block, right? Just antagonizing and showing how easy it is for them to get away with things. So you worked for that office that should have been prosecuting earlier.
Right. I did work for that office, and to be honest, I'm not very surprised that what happened is very unfortunate, and I think this goes to show that we cannot count on our leaders, and that we need to take voting very seriously, not only for national elections, but also local elections. And one of the things that I mentioned when I got up there to speak was that I'm starting to get very frustrated on having these discussions and talks about racism and discrimination for education credit, but there's no action plan to sort of go about it. And I think a lot of people are scared, just like about this bill, right? I'm sure there are officers who are scared about implementing some of the components of your bill, which is something that I definitely wanted to get into. Can you talk a little bit about this law enforcement accountability?
It's so interesting. Sure, so let me tell you what's in the bill, and then I'll tell you about the opposition a little bit. Okay, so the bill, what it does is it says that law enforcement must be held accountable for their actions. So if you have excessive use of force, ending in serious bodily injury or death, you will be held accountable for that. Specifically, body cams must be worn by law enforcement officers pretty much at all times. That footage also needs to be released to the public. We're gonna also make some exemptions for privacy and whatnot, but for the most part, that must be made available, especially when it's under investigation. Very important. We are putting in a duty to intervene. So if you're a law enforcement officer and you watch your fellow law enforcement officer put his knee to someone's neck for 9 minutes without intervening, you have the same liability as that officer, criminal and civil, okay? We also take away the civil shield, the shield that law enforcement officers have. We call it, this immunity, right? This qualified immunity. We're actually taking that away because that means that people don't get justice. Families don't get justice. So we say, you know what? You don't have immunity for your actions. You will be held responsible. And then we get rid of some of these things like chokeholds and fleeing felon and just the standard of when you can use force. If you're not in danger, if you're not in imminent danger, you can't use deadly force, period. Now, it's interesting the opposition we're getting. I will tell you, I've been working on this bill for a while, and rest in peace to Elijah McClain and Devon Bailey, who really sparked the conversation in Colorado. But I received no support from law enforcement.
Wow.
And they didn't want to have any bill move forward because they didn't think that they were wrong, and they didn't want statewide action. They were going to take care of their own officers. We know that's not working. The police policing the police is not working, unfortunately. And so, people are saying a lot of different things. Oh, this is going to make it, you never want to work again. We're going to sell our houses if anything happens. But I respond by saying, if you don't do anything wrong, you will not be held accountable for it. And that's the same thing they say to us. Well, why were you out in the streets that night? What were you doing? Why were you there? Why were you driving with your music on in your car down the street? Why were you holding that Skittles? Why were you at that park?
Right.
And so, but really, if you don't do anything wrong, you're fine. Right. But what the truth of the matter is that some folks know that they've been acting outside of the law for a very long time, and they've used that immunity to shield them, and that's just not going to happen anymore. And so the bill's really important to get passed for those reasons. And I will say to what you said earlier, I don't mind being called an angry black woman because I should be angry at what's happening in my community, what's happening in our community. We should all be angry, But with anger without action, I think is not a good use of that energy. And so that's why we're taking action in the building, in the Capitol, which is, I think, really important. But it's happening across the city. Recently, the Denver Police Department has acknowledged their excessive use of force and changed their policies. No longer will they allow chokeholds. No longer will they do fleeing felon. And so they've changed their policies just today. Additionally, the school board has said we don't want to have law enforcement officers in our school because it feeds the school to prison pipeline. We know. It's interesting because we're in Colorado, okay? So you have Columbine, right? And so Colorado is really the place that started putting cops in schools because of Columbine. But the effect is not in white Columbine. It's happening in schools right here in Denver where they're more diverse. And what's happening is kids are being put in prison and put in the criminal justice system for normal childhood behavior, getting in a fight. Listen, I got in fights when I was a kid. You know, I got in fights. Thankfully, I didn't have anyone ticketing or arresting me in my school. I got in trouble by my mama, and that was worse than anything else, okay? And so we need to go back to that. We need to hold, yes, young people accountable, but it doesn't mean that they have to be put in a system where they'll never get out. So I'm so proud of the work that's happening on the local level too. Local, state, and federal action is what we need, and quite frankly, if we're elected and we don't respond, we're irresponsible.
And you know, I want to ask you, you know, to a layperson, to someone who doesn't understand, what is a bill, and what is the current status of the bill right now?
Yep. So basically, a bill is how you change law, and it's like the Schoolhouse Rocks. I don't know if you guys know that reference. Some of you younger folks may not, but it's not how it works. Schoolhouse Rocks was a lie. It's much more complicated than that. But it does. A bill is an idea from a legislator written into policy that then goes to a vote of the rest of the body and then becomes a law if it's signed into law by the governor. In Colorado, a bill has to pass the House, the Senate, and then be signed by the governor. Right now, the bill is in the Senate. It's almost done, and it has to go to the House for approval as well.
And when is it going to the House?
It'll go to the House on Wednesday, and you'll hear public testimony. Then you have a debate of just the members, so then we go and kind of debate back and forth. And then we have an official recorded vote, and then it goes to the governor. So if you're thinking about helping, if you want to know how to help, I would say reach out to your elected official, your senator, your representative, and the governor, and say support 217. It's very important that we have everyone's support moving this forward. And if your members already signed on to support the bill, tell them thank you.
Right, great point. And you know, I just kind of wanted to circle back around. I totally wholeheartedly agree with you. I think that we have gotten a tremendous amount of people out here protesting day and night. And one of the other reasons why I wanted to meet with you is because, you know, I just didn't want the protesters' efforts to be in vain.
Yeah.
I was attending protesting events, and I kept hearing, I hear you, I see you. They had speakers, they had people talking about racism, discrimination, thanking everybody for coming out, and more speakers. And that's fine. There was dancing, movies, and all that is great, but I feel like with all these massive people who are out here, oftentimes we're all looking for a direction. We're trying to figure out, okay, we're here, now what do we do from here? What steps can we take? And I felt like I was attending protests after protest, and it was the same event itinerary over and over. So, which is one of the reasons why I wanted to meet with you. And it's not that necessarily that I'm meeting with, you know, Ms. Eric because she's a Democrat. It's actually, this is the only...
But I am a Democrat.
Right, she is. But that's not the only reason. This is the only action plan that we have, and I think Colorado is in actually a very, very unique place because we are actually the only state right now with a legislation that is in the Senate that is moving quickly, and eventually will go to the House, and we'll possibly get a termination this week, and we might actually be the first state to have some type of legalization, some legislation to hold police officers accountable for their actions in light of this George Floyd's death. And I feel like this is a great opportunity. Colorado is a model state. I'm excited to be here. I think, you know, I talked to you earlier. Colorado was amongst the first states to legalize marijuana in 2012, but it wasn't actually into full effect until 2016. No one knew how that would actually look like, but everybody was in agreement in one mind that, hey, this will probably benefit society, that we try to legalize marijuana. And I can't say that it's a similar situation here because obviously Black people are dying in particular. But what I'm saying is we should all try to, if we truly believe in this bill, support it.
Yeah.
Support the bill, even though we might not know what it looks like. So I'm wondering, for the people who might say like, hey, what is this gonna look like? How can I somewhat be confident? Can we revise the bill?
Yeah.
What should we do?
So it's not over, right? You can't have one bill that's gonna change everything. But you can start somewhere, and this is a start. But we gotta change things across the board. I wanna say that people who are not legislators need to take action. What does that look like? Is your workplace diverse? Is your school diverse? Have you intervened when you saw racism? Do you step up and say something when someone is saying things inappropriate? It's on all of us to change the way that society is interacting with Black people specifically, but people of color in general. So the responsibility is not just on me, though it is a great responsibility and I'm honored to serve. It's on all of us, because I wish I could write a law that said no more racism. It's over, it's done, that's illegal, okay? That's not how it works, right? The way that we're gonna change hearts and minds and souls and bodies is by having these conversations. So I don't get offended when I see people at protests dancing. Look, it's Pride Month. I'm the first LGBT legislator, African-American legislator in the state. I do love peace and pride, but no one calls pride a peaceful protest anymore, but it was a protest. It started out as actually a riot, right? And so my point there is to say that I don't mind if you're celebrating and you're showing who you are, because people do want to be seen, but they don't want to be seen without action. We're over being a hashtag. It's time for us to act, and it's time for us to act across the board. So I think, as we close, I just want to, again, thank our allies and our champions for really showing up and being really uncomfortable in these conversations. Keep doing it, keep being uncomfortable, keep stepping up, and even sometimes I should say stepping back. When it's time for a person of color and a Black person to lead, let that happen, whatever space you're in, and keep supporting. And if you are willing and able, please reach out to your legislator to support 217.
Thank you. Well, I just have one more question for you. So, can people attend the public hearings? What can they actually do if they want to actually sort of protest around the Capitol? What can they actually do amongst these next days to show their presence, to show that, hey, we're out here, when we know you're in there. Maybe we can't come in there, but we're here and we're going to show up.
So it's so interesting to me, but the Capitol's open. It's the people's house. I mean, the Capitol is your building. It's open. So of course you can come and watch. And public hearing will be on Wednesday, probably a floor debate on Thursday.
What time?
Now, we don't know. That's the hard part, is we don't know what time, we don't know how. But you can come in and you can see what's going on. You can come into the building. You can watch from the gallery or the committee room. If you don't know where you're going, just ask someone where the hearing is. Everyone in the building knows about it. But it's your building, so come on in. Just know that there are going to be some requirements around mask wearing and temperature checks and things like that. But you're welcome in, and quite frankly, we need you there.
And are you on social media platforms?
Yeah.
What's your name on the social media platforms so people can follow you to stay up to date on what is going on?
You can follow me on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, and I'm just at Leslie Herod, that's Herod, or Representative Leslie Herod on Facebook. I also recommend you follow Tay Anderson, who is a young man who's doing some great work he's a director of the school board, but he's leading a lot of these protests. And then also Elizabeth Epps, her name is just at Elizabeth on Twitter, and she's doing a lot of great work too. So follow us all, and we'll keep you posted.
All right. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to meet with me. I really appreciate it. I'm sure the community will also appreciate it, especially since you're always keeping in contact with us and keeping us up to date on what's going on. And we'll see what happens here. Colorado may be well on their way to making history again.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me, and let's make history together.